The wet squeal of rubber on tile came a split second before the boot. Brent Calloway's kick smashed into Eli Mercer's back, sending the 42-year-old janitor skidding across the slick gym floor. The mop clattered away, spinning into a crescent of dirty water. 20 well-heeled students at Iron Forge Academy went silent. Phones paused mid-scroll, breath caught mid-chest, as the scene froze beneath the cold buzz of fluorescent lights. Brent stepped over Eli like debris. Maybe if you spent less time staring at real fighters and more time doing your job, these mats would actually be clean. Eli pushed up slowly, water soaking through the gray uniform he wore like armor. His hands, scar-mapped, steady from a lifetime of earned discipline, trembled, not from fear but from the old electricity he'd buried for years. Eyes down, breath measured, he swallowed the moment. Across the lobby glass, Nina Alvarez turned away from the front desk because she'd learned the cost of watching too closely. The gym was a cathedral to curated violence, sprawled across 8,000 square feet of prime Phoenix real estate, its floor-to-ceiling windows staring down on Scottsdale's spotless avenues. Chrome and black everywhere, the pro octagon gleaming under LEDs, leather-heavy bags hanging like quiet jurors. Money hummed in the HVAC and seeped from the stainless steel fixtures. This was Brent's kingdom, and he owned 30% of it, plus the narrative. Now you've got something real to clean, Brent added, punting the bucket so a wave of brown water broke over Eli's shins. He'd been invisible here for 3 years, clocking in at 6 p.m. through the service door, blending into the background with the same precision he used to bring to footwork and feints. Mop, empty bins, white mirrors, watch, learn, endure. Go home to Leah Mercer, 16, homework spread like a small hope across a too-small table, and the late bills that waited like predators in the drawer. Miguel Santos had noticed, he always noticed, the way Eli's shoulders settled into a perfect guard when a grappling demo went wrong. The unconscious pivot of a rear foot when a student shadowboxed the wrong angle. Muscle memory isn't a thing you fake. It's a thing that inhabits you. Brent strutted toward the mirrors, basking in his reflection and his students' expectation. He was the man who never made the pro ranks, but learned how to monetize the aura. Tech CEOs, influencers, athletes who needed the sheen of menace for their feeds. His clips were all violent crescendos and alpha captions. And yet, for all the posturing, his instruction leaked flaws. Chins high where they should be buried, elbows flared where they should be tight, escapes taught like wishes. Eli cleaned near the equipment rack while the lobby screen looped the day's security footage, flickers of drills, awkward defenses, drills again. He watched Caleb Raines drift in with a black eye and a wounded silence. The kid's raw talent tripped by the same bad habits Brent kept reinforcing. Caleb's loss had been inevitable. The rear naked choke, defense taught wrong, corrected never. It's not your fault, Brent told Caleb, pacing, voice rising for the audience. Street guys fight dirty. They don't respect the art. Eli's grip whitened on the mop handle. The life his skin. Brent raised his chin and demonstrated the same incorrect defense that had betrayed Caleb. Neck up, arms wide, everything a mouth-open invitation. See? Proper form. No, Eli said. Soft. Almost himself. But the word traveled. The room stilled. Heads turned. Nina's hand hovered over her phone. Brent's smile thinned. What did you say? Eli blinked the word back into his mouth. Nothing, sir. Brent walked over, crowd gathering as if by gravity. The janitor wants to coach champions now. His voice dripped honey and knives. Did you just correct me? Eli lifted his eyes. Calm. Flat. Certain. You're teaching him wrong. That defense will get him hurt. A ripple of murmurs. The air tightened. Brent's skin flushed the color of pride about to do something stupid. Show us then. Demonstrate for the class. Eli hesitated, scanning faces. Caleb confused. Nina worried. Students widening their circle, screens ready. He set the mop aside and stepped to the heavy bag. The first combination was not flashy. It was right. Jab, cross, hook, shoulders snapping like a hinge tuned by God. Hips carrying power like a secret. The 100-pound bag jumped back 3 feet, chains groaning from the ceiling. Eli's feet were poetry written in geometry, angles, balance, breath. The second combination sounded like a verdict. The bag almost tore free. Silence. Then the oxygen rushed back, and with it came panic into Brent's eyes, flushing into a purple that had nothing to do with exertion. "Don't ever disrespect me in my own gym again," he hissed, close enough that Eli could smell mint and ego. "Or you're out." Eli nodded once and stepped back, ashamed he'd let himself surface. But the damage was done, and everyone knew it. The janitor moved like a fighter. The fighter moved like a brand. That night, Brent's fingers tapped keys until dawn, pulling fragments from old databases, amateur bouts, a hint of service, a name that matched but didn't confirm. Enough to fear, not enough to stop. The next week became ritualized humiliation. Emergency cleaning ordered during peak sparring, sweat and blood blooming on surfaces Eli had just polished. "Careful around the equipment, boy," Brent would say, the last word dipped in a tone legal enough to dodge complaints, but poisonous enough to leave a mark. Mirrors re-cleaned for streaks that didn't exist. Laughter calibrated to land within earshot. Trainers drifting away from the blast radius. Nina logging everything in a quiet ledger she pretended not to keep. Eli endured. Rent in 10 days. Leah's shoes too tight. Pride is a luxury you buy after survival. Week 2. The warfare went psychological. Crop photos with Eli blurred in the background. Captions about knowing your lane. Followers applauded. Memes multiplied. Caleb Raines watched Eli's hands as he wiped steel, hands that recentered into perfect guard without thinking. Something didn't add up, and the kid knew it. "Hold pads," Brent said on a crowded weeknight. "Not a request." "I'm not trained for that," Eli answered, eyes on the floor rack. "You seemed confident last week," Brent said, smiling for the circle of phones. The first shots were light, just showmanship. Then heavier. Then missing the pads to glance forearms and shoulders on purpose. Eli felt lightning burrow through an old left shoulder injury. His fingers twitched toward a fist, then opened. He set the pads down. "That's right," Brent called, voice booming for the learners who'd paid to belong. "Walk away. Know your place." By weekend, a security cam clip hit Brent's feed. Eli breaching anonymity on the heavy bag. The caption was engineered cruelty. The comments were worse. Leah found the video Sunday night and cried until something in Eli cracked that wasn't bone. At 2:17 a.m., the gym was a submarine of blue light and humming vents. Eli unrolled the old leather wraps he kept folded beneath paper towels on his cart. He rapped, breathed, faced the bag that had betrayed him, and tried to forgive it. The combinations flowed like a language he hadn't spoken in public for years. Jab, cross, hook, angle. Step inside, sleeve the ribs, exit on the blind side. Guard like a metronome, hips like a tide. Precision of a surgeon, weight of a sledgehammer. The bag swung and sang. Miguel Santos saw him through the glass as he returned for misplaced keys. He stood in the doorway and watched long enough to understand what he was seeing. When Eli shifted from strikes to invisible grappling, Miguel whispered the only prayer he still believed in, "Holy." Eli turned, caught mid-truth. Silence layered the air between them. "How long?" Miguel asked. "Golden gloves?" "Oh, 3207, Eli said, unwinding leather. "Combatives instructor after. 15 years mixed training. Then bills. Then this." Miguel nodded once, as if a puzzle had snapped into place. "Brent's been teaching bad habits for 3 years. You've been watching every night." "Every night," Eli said. "I kept quiet because I needed the job." "You won't have it much longer," Miguel said, voice flat. "He's looking for a replacement already. I heard him tell Nina." The words landed like a body shot. Sudden, deep, honest. Eli leaned on the bag, breath slow. "There's more," Miguel added. "Ownership's investigating him. Too many complaints. Nina's been documenting. But he's planning something bigger to make you the problem on your way out." Eli stared at the floor. "Leah's applications are in 6 months. I can't afford unemployed." Miguel stepped close, eyes hard with the kind of compassion that moves weight. "Then don't be his victim. Expose him. Challenge him the only way he can't spin. Fighter to fighter. Public. He can't refuse without setting his own brand on fire. He pulled up Brent's latest post. Eli in the background, the caption a smirk. Call him out in the comments. Make it about respect. Dignity. He'll have to say yes. Eli breathe in. Breathe out. Remembered Leah's tears, the word boy, the kick on the wet floor. He rewound the wrap around his knuckles like a vow. The comment went up at 3:47 a.m. Simple as a bell. Settle it like men. You and me in the ring. Winner stays at Iron Forge. Loser leaves. Unless you're afraid of someone who fights back. Eli Mercer. By morning, the post was a bonfire. Students buzzed. Local forums took odds. DMs flooded Brent's phone until vanity made the choice for him. Friday night, after hours. Reservation only. Phones everywhere. Live streams humming toward thousands. Brent shadowboxed for the cameras, all teeth and swagger. Eli came in the back in black shorts and hand wraps, moving like a man unburdened by theater. Nina took the center as reluctant referee. 3 3-minute rounds, or until someone can't continue. Touch gloves. Keep it clean. Brent's mouth ran because his lungs were already scared. Ready to learn your place, janitor? Eli didn't answer. He touched gloves and stepped back into silence that belonged to him. Fight, Nina said. Brent charged, throwing haymakers meant for highlight reels. Eli wasn't where the punches were. Slip, duck, shoulder roll, step inside the arc so the air took the weight instead. The room's energy shifted from bloodlust to confusion. Brent hit nothing but the noise he'd made himself. Eli threw 3 jabs that whispered discipline. Each one a message tapped gently on Brent's face. I see you. I choose not to hurt you yet. Round 1 ended with Brent red, winded, bewildered. In his corner, Caleb Raines whispered, maybe he's not fighting because he doesn't need to. Round 2, Eli began to teach. Jab cross on the button. Hook to the body that folded Brent's breath. A tempered uppercut that sent a mouthguard skittering. Phones shook in hands, trying to hold still. Miguel leaned in between rounds. This is a clinic. Finish clean when it's time. Round 3 barely started. Brent lunged desperate, with a telegraphed right that carried his whole house with it. Eli stepped inside, left hook short and surgical, turning over at the hinge of the jaw. The sound was a dull, final thud. Brent's lights went out before gravity remembered him. Eli knelt immediately, 2 fingers at the carotid, another hand cradling the head he'd just disconnected. When Brent's eyes blinked back, Eli guided him up gently. You okay? He asked, voice low enough to be mistaken for a prayer. Cheers detonated around them. Upload icons bloomed. Hashtags sparked in 1,000 captions. Nina swallowed hard because she knew what would follow victory, retaliation. Eli helped Brent to his feet. The crowd's roar swelled. In the torrent of noise, a colder current threaded through, a shape taking form behind the celebration, stitched from pride, fear, and the kind of vengeance that doesn't fight fair. Eli felt it as clearly as a draft in a locked room. The real fight hadn't started yet, and the next punch wouldn't come from the ring. It would come from the system, and it would aim to break more than bone. Because when morning came, sirens would too, and they would be for him. The sound of applause still echoed in Eli Mercer's ears as the night gave way to dawn. But by sunrise, the same crowd that had cheered his courage was already replaying the knockout in slow motion, dissecting it from every angle, turning a moment of justice into content. Brent Calloway woke in a haze of humiliation and hate. His jaw ached, but it was nothing compared to the sting of losing control of his narrative. His name was trending, but not for the reasons he wanted. Justice for Eli had crossed 100,000 mentions by morning. Clips of his collapse, now stitched with slow-motion captions like the bully finally fell. Brent didn't see a loss. He saw a weapon. By mid-morning, he sat in his lawyer's office, a sleek room that smelled of leather, espresso, and vengeance. Richard Kellerman, his attorney, had built a reputation in Phoenix, turning lawsuits into PR campaigns. Assault with intent to cause grievous harm, Kellerman said calmly, scanning the viral clip. We can work with this. Frame it as workplace violence. Emotional trauma. The optics of an unstable ex-fighter attacking his boss? The public will eat it up. Brent nodded, jaw wrapped in fresh gauze. Make him pay. At 6 a.m. Tuesday, Eli's apartment door shook under a heavy knock. Leah Mercer froze mid-step in the kitchen as 3 officers entered. Eli Mercer, you're under arrest for aggravated assault, one of them said, cuffing him before he could speak. The neighbors peeked from cracked doors, phones recording the man who'd once swept their hallway. Leah pressed her face to the window, tears cutting silent streaks down her cheeks as her father was led away in handcuffs. By afternoon, Brent Calloway was on Good Morning Arizona, his neck brace framed perfectly for sympathy. I gave Eli a job when no one else would, he told the host, voice tremoring on cue. I try to help him find purpose. But some people, they just can't handle discipline. The interview went viral within hours. Hashtag shifted. Hashtag Justice for Eli became hashtag Justice for Brent. News outlets replayed the sanitized footage, Eli's knockout punch in high definition, cropped just before Brent's own attacks. The narrative had flipped, and the world had followed. Eli sat in a holding cell, staring at his reflection in the metal table. His public defender, Jennifer Walsh, arrived with tired eyes and a stack of papers she hadn't had time to read. They're pressing felony assault charges, she said quietly. Workplace enhancement. They're using your military background to argue excessive force. Brent's claiming emotional and physical trauma, $200,000 in damages. Eli nodded once. He planned this. Across the city, Nina Alvarez watched Brent's interviews on loop, her stomach turning. She'd seen the videos he hadn't released. The verbal assaults, the racist remarks, the deliberate humiliation. But Iron Forge Academy's investors had made their stance clear. Silence is loyalty. If you testify against him, you're done here, warned James Morrison, the gym's primary stakeholder. We can't have staff undermining our leadership. Nina sat behind the front desk that evening, eyes darting to the locked drawer where she'd been keeping her notes. Incident reports, complaint logs, timestamp footage. She documented everything, but evidence means nothing without courage. Meanwhile, Brent's new wave of followers treated him like a wounded hero. His GoFundMe for recovery and justice crossed $50,000 in 4 days. Memes of Eli flooded social media. Captions like "Know your place" and "Don't bite the hand that feeds you." But in the quiet corners of TikTok, something unexpected began to stir. A 16-year-old girl with tearful eyes uploaded a video that would rewrite the narrative again. "My name is Leah Mercer," she said, her voice trembling. "That man you're calling violent is my dad. He worked night shifts cleaning that gym to pay for my school and my mom's hospital bills before she died. He never raised his voice at anyone. He didn't attack his boss. He defended himself after 3 years of bullying." The video spread faster than Brent's lies ever could. Within 24 hours, it hit 3 million views. Hashtags flipped back. Hashtag Justice for Eli trended again. People began asking questions. Who was this janitor everyone ignored? Why was no one showing the full story? In her small apartment, Nina opened her laptop and watched Leah's video 3 times. Then, without hesitation, she reached for the drawer key. The envelope she'd been too afraid to use for months felt heavy in her hands, like a loaded confession. Inside were printed complaint logs, audio memos, and screenshots of Brent's internal messages, evidence of everything. That same night, a text lit up Eli's attorney's phone from an unknown number. "Nina Alvarez, I have proof Brent Calloway's been lying. You'll get it by morning." But the morning brought something else too, a war of narratives. Brent doubled down. More interviews, more tears, more edited clips that showed only what he wanted. Local talk shows painted Eli as a threat. The phrase "trained fighter attacks his boss" dominated headlines. In the courthouse hallway, Leah clutched her father's hand as reporters swarmed. "They don't see the truth," she whispered. Eli smiled faintly. "They will." The prosecution presented Brent as a victim of a violent outburst from an unhinged employee. His lawyer's tone dripped pity. "My client was mentoring a troubled veteran when he was assaulted without provocation. Mr. Mercer's combat training made him lethal. But halfway through the pretrial hearing, a man walked in wearing a faded gym jacket, Miguel Santos. He took a seat quietly at the back, eyes on Eli, face unreadable. He knew what he had to do. And as the courtroom lights flickered against the weight of lies, a single thought burned in Miguel's mind. If truth was a fight, he was done staying in the corner. The air inside the courtroom felt heavier than any ring Eli Mercer had ever stepped into. Rows of cameras blinked from the back, and a wall of microphones waited like predators for a soundbite. But the real noise was silence, that thick, suspended kind that means someone's reputation is about to die. At the prosecutor's table sat Brent Calloway, neck brace slightly loosened for effect, his lawyer Richard Kellerman whispering a carefully rehearsed script. Brent's eyes flicked to the jury, then to the rows of spectators, his audience. He knew how to perform. He always had. Eli sat at the defense table beside Jennifer Walsh, his hands folded, expression calm. But his stillness was deceptive. Every heartbeat carried the memory of fists, sweat, humiliation, and the burning image of his daughter, Leah, crying as he was taken away in handcuffs. He was tired of silence. When the judge entered, all rose. Cameras clicked. Kellerman stood first, his voice polished and deliberate. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this case is not about social media narratives or viral videos. It's about violence. My client, Mr. Calloway, was brutally assaulted by an unstable former employee with professional combat training. A man who concealed his dangerous abilities, and in doing so, nearly destroyed an innocent life. He paced slowly, holding up a still image. Eli's punch frozen midair, Brent's body snapping back. This, he said, is not self-defense. This is vengeance. The prosecution built its story brick by brick. Eli's military record, his boxing background, his strength turned into liability. The jurors nodded slowly, taking in every word. Brent lowered his head dramatically, rubbing his jaw as if the ache had just returned. Then came the defense's turn. Jennifer Walsh stood, shoulders squared but voice soft. What you just heard, she began, is a story polished for sympathy. A fiction crafted to erase 3 years of abuse. She glanced toward Eli. My client didn't hide his abilities. He hid his pain. Her tone sharpened. We have documentation of verbal harassment, racial slurs, and psychological torment endured daily by Mr. Mercer at Iron Forge Academy. You'll hear it in Mr. Calloway's own voice before this trial is done. Whispers rippled across the courtroom. Brent shifted in his seat, jaw tightening. Jennifer gestured toward the back. And you'll hear from a man who spent 30 years training fighters. A man who saw through Mr. Calloway's lies. Please call Miguel Santos to the stand. Miguel rose slowly. His steps echoed through the courtroom like distant punches. His weathered hands gripped the Bible. His eyes, calm and heavy, found Eli's for a fleeting moment before turning to face the judge. Mr. Santos, Jennifer began. How long have you known the defendant? About 3 years, Miguel said, voice low and gravelly. Since he started working at the gym. I was a senior coach there. Did you ever witness Mr. Calloway's behavior toward Mr. Mercer? Miguel nodded once. Every day. He used him as a punching bag for his ego. Called him boy in front of clients. Scheduled cleaning when fighters were sparring to humiliate him. I saw him kick over buckets, spill water, and laugh. We all saw it. We just didn't have the courage to stop it. Jennifer leaned forward. And did you record any of these incidents? Miguel reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small USB drive. 17 minutes of audio. His words, his threats, his hate. Brent's lawyer shot to his feet. Objection. This evidence wasn't disclosed during pre-trial. Jennifer smiled faintly. It was disclosed an hour ago, Your Honor, the moment Mr. Santos handed it to law enforcement. New evidence rule applies. The judge nodded. Objection overruled. Proceed. Jennifer plugged the drive into the courtroom monitor. Static crackled through the speakers. Then Brent's voice, unmistakable, arrogant, venomous. I'm going to break that boy down until he quits or does something stupid. Let him swing first, and I'll end him legally. The man's a relic, a has-been. He doesn't belong here. Gasps broke through the room. The audio rolled on, clips of taunts, racist undertones, and laughter laced with cruelty. Some people think watching fights makes them fighters. I'll teach him what happens when janitors get ideas. When the last clip ended, the silence returned, colder, heavier. The jury didn't look at Brent. They didn't have to. His mask was gone. Jennifer spoke softly. That was Mr. Calloway's real voice. The one he used when the cameras weren't on. Brent's hand clenched into a fist under the table. Kellerman leaned in, whispering something sharp. But the damage was irreversible. The next witness was Nina Alvarez, the gym manager who'd kept her head down too long. Her voice trembled at first, but she found strength in the truth. "I documented everything," she said, placing a folder on the stand. Every insult, every shift change meant to degrade him. Every ignored complaint. I was told to keep quiet, to protect the brand. But I can't protect lies anymore. The defense rested after that. The evidence was a mountain, and Brent's empire was crumbling beneath it. When Brent took the stand, the performance began again. Slow, tearful, deliberate. "I try to help him," he said. "I treated him like a brother." Jennifer rose for cross-examination, voice calm as a scalpel. "You said you treated him like a brother. Did you call your brother boy for 3 years? I never meant it that way. Did you or did you not kick over his bucket while laughing? It was an accident. Did you post videos mocking him to your thousands of followers? I was trying to teach humility." Jennifer took a step closer. "Then perhaps, Mr. Calloway, you should take your own lesson." She pressed play on one final clip, Brent's own voice saying, "If he ever steps out of line, I'll destroy him. In the gym or in court." The courtroom shifted. Brent's face drained of color. And for the first time, he looked like a man who realized the fight he'd started was one he couldn't win. The crowd inside the Maricopa County Courthouse had stopped breathing. Every camera, every journalist, every curious onlooker leaned forward as if the truth itself was hanging by a thread. The air was so thick with tension you could feel it pressing against your skin. At the defense table, Eli Mercer sat with his hands folded, posture straight, eyes lowered. He'd faced combat zones, losses, humiliation, and sleepless nights, but nothing compared to this silence. This silence was judgment before judgment. Brent Calloway, in his tailored suit and neck brace, was unraveling by the second. His once polished charisma had dissolved into frantic, shallow breaths. Even his lawyer, Richard Kellerman, could see the battle was lost, though pride kept him on his feet. "Mr. Calloway," the judge said, "you may step down." Brent opened his mouth, perhaps to reclaim some dignity, but no sound came out. His performance had bled dry. He sank back into his chair, eyes darting toward the jury box, searching for mercy. He found none. Then the judge nodded to the defense. "Mr. Mercer, you may take the stand." Eli rose slowly, the kind of slow that carried the weight of 3 years of restraint. The courtroom watched a man who had been kicked, mocked, arrested, and somehow remained unbroken. "Mr. Mercer," said Jennifer Walsh, his attorney, "please tell the court why you never fought back against Mr. Calloway's harassment before that night." Eli looked up, his voice deep, steady. "Because I needed the job." The words landed like hammer strikes. "My daughter, Leah, needed school clothes. Rent was late. Food was short. I took everything that man gave me because I couldn't afford to lose the little I had left." He paused, swallowing the lump of years stuck in his throat. "I let him call me boy. I let him spill water and make me clean it again. I let him humiliate me because I thought silence was strength. But that night, when he crossed the line again, it wasn't about anger. It was about dignity. The audience was motionless. Even the bailiffs froze. Eli continued, his tone softening. "Where I come from, we're taught to fight only when we must. But there's a difference between fighting for pride and fighting for peace. I wasn't defending my ego. I was defending the last thing I had left, my humanity." He sat back down, and for a long time, no one spoke. Then Brent's voice cut through the silence, raw, uncontrolled. "That's a lie," he shouted, leaping to his feet. "You wanted to humiliate me. You loved every second of it. You think you're some kind of hero? You're nothing." The courtroom gasped. Reporters scribbled furiously as Judge Hawkins slammed her gavel. Order! But Brent couldn't stop. The mask had cracked beyond repair. His voice rose with years of suppressed hate. You people always think you're owed something. You think discipline is racism, respect is oppression. You don't belong in that ring, Mercer. You never did. The last word echoed across the room. Ugly, venomous, final. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Cameras caught everything. Brent's lawyer buried his face in his hands. Leah Mercer buried hers in her father's shoulder, trembling. Judge Hawkins' voice was steel. Mr. Calloway, one more word and you'll be held in contempt. But the damage was already irreversible. When the jury filed out to deliberate, the tension was so thick even the hum of fluorescent lights sounded too loud. 37 minutes later, the foreman returned with a folded sheet of paper. The judge's gavel tapped once. On the charge of felony assault, she read aloud, we find the defendant, Eli Mercer, not guilty. The room erupted. Reporters surged forward. Leah sobbed into her father's chest, whispering, "We did it, Daddy. We did it." Judge Hawkins wasn't done. Furthermore, she continued, Mr. Calloway is ordered to pay $75,000 in compensatory damages for emotional distress, lost wages, and legal costs. This court recommends the Arizona Athletic Commission review his training certifications. Brent's mouth fell open. What? He breathed. You can't. But she could, and she did. Outside, the courthouse steps became a storm of microphones and cameras. Reporters shouted questions. Eli, how does it feel to be free? He smiled faintly. Justice doesn't make you free. It reminds you you were never meant to be in chains. By nightfall, the headlines were everywhere. The janitor who fought back. Mercer versus Calloway. The knockout heard across the nation. From mop to master. The man who redefined strength. The Arizona Athletic Commission suspended Brent Calloway's license within 48 hours. Sponsors cut ties. His gym membership numbers dropped to single digits. Overnight, he'd gone from mentor to pariah. Meanwhile, Miguel Santos and Nina Alvarez stood quietly beside Eli outside the courthouse. Miguel smiled faintly. You didn't just win a case, Eli. You won back your name. Eli looked at the crowd of supporters chanting justice for Eli and shook his head. It was never about revenge. It was about respect. But as the flashlights dimmed and the crowd faded, he couldn't shake the feeling that something deeper had just begun. Because justice in the courtroom was one thing. Justice in the real world? That was a different kind of fight. And Brent Calloway, humiliated, stripped, and burning with vengeance, still had one more round left in him. He wasn't done fighting. But this time, neither was Eli Mercer. 3 months after the verdict, the desert heat in Phoenix carried a strange new wind. The kind that smells like redemption after a long drought. The storm of headlines had finally settled, but its echoes hadn't. Eli Mercer had become a household name, a symbol of quiet resilience, a man who'd fought back against a system built to keep him invisible. The world had seen a janitor stand up to a bully and win. But Eli didn't see victory. He saw responsibility. The settlement money sat untouched in his account. The offers came fast. High-end gyms, sponsorship deals, interviews with slick PR angles, and fake smiles. But Eli wasn't interested in selling a story. He wanted to build one. He spent days walking through empty lots on the east side of Phoenix, searching for something he couldn't name. On the 4th day, he found it. An old mechanic's warehouse, walls stained with oil and time, a faded sign still clinging to its bolts. It wasn't much, but it was his kind of place. Quiet, empty, ready to be rebuilt. That night, Miguel Santos met him there with 2 cups of coffee and a slow grin. This it? He asked. Eli nodded. Second Chance Defense Academy, he said softly. Miguel chuckled. You already named it. I didn't, Eli replied. Life did. They spent weeks scrubbing the concrete floors, welding racks, repainting walls. Eli handled the heavy lifting. Miguel handled the equipment. Nina Alvarez came by every few days with donations, gloves, mats, even mirrors from Iron Forge's storage unit. Think of it as poetic justice, she said with a wink. And when Leah Mercer saw the finished space, she cried. Her father had turned a scar into a sanctuary. They opened quietly. No billboards. No PR. Just a handwritten sign by the door. Second Chance Defense Academy. Everyone deserves dignity. The first student was Caleb Rains, the same young fighter who'd once watched Eli mop the floors in silence. He showed up after work, head bowed, gym bag in hand. "I want to learn from the man who taught my old coach humility," he said. Eli smiled, tossed him a pair of gloves. "Then start with the basics. Clean the mats." Caleb blinked, confused. "Discipline," Eli explained. "You earn the right to fight by learning to respect the ground you stand on." Word spread faster than any marketing campaign could. Within a month, Second Chance was packed. Students of all backgrounds, shapes, and stories. Single mothers, teenagers, veterans, office workers who'd never thrown a punch. They came not for violence, but for peace of mind. Eli taught them the fundamentals, but also something more: ethics. He called it warrior philosophy. A true fighter doesn't dominate others. He defends those who can't defend themselves. Soon, the videos of Eli teaching, filmed and edited by Leah, started going viral. Not because of fancy camera angles or aggressive slogans, but because they showed something real. A man teaching self-defense to a kid with autism. A group of elderly women learning how to escape holds. A teenage girl crying tears of triumph after breaking her first board. Hashtags shifted again. Hashtag Justice for Eli became hashtag Second Chance Movement. The comments were full of stories, people saying how they'd been inspired to stand up to bullies, to leave abusive jobs, to start over. By the third month, the local news ran a feature. From Janitor to Guardian, the man behind Second Chance Defense Academy. Reporters asked Eli what made his program different. He smiled. "We don't teach people how to fight. We teach them why they shouldn't have to." The academy grew, and with it, a quiet revolution. Other gyms across Arizona started adopting his code: zero tolerance for harassment, mandatory ethics training, respect-first culture. The International Martial Arts Federation even reached out, requesting permission to study his curriculum. For the first time in decades, Eli's mornings began with peace. He still cleaned his own floors, still moved through the space with quiet precision, still hung the same heavy bag that had once exposed him. But now it bore a brass plate. Sometimes the most dangerous man in the room is the one everyone underestimates. Meanwhile, far from the bright lights of redemption, Brent Calloway was falling apart. His name was poison in Phoenix. The gym's ownership had dissolved his shares, sponsors had ghosted him, and his followers had turned savage. The same crowd that once adored him now called him a fraud. He'd moved to Nevada, working part-time at a discount gym where no one recognized him. Every day, he watched students laugh, train, live, everything he'd lost because of one man. And each night, he'd scroll through social media, watching Eli Mercer on screen, calm, wise, loved. The man he'd tried to destroy had become everything he'd pretended to be. One night, Brent stared at his reflection in the gym's mirror and whispered, "I made him famous." The mirror didn't answer, but somewhere deep down, he knew the truth. Eli hadn't become famous because of Brent's hate. He'd become unbreakable in spite of it. And that kind of victory, that was a wound Brent would never recover from. Yet fate wasn't done with either of them, because one man's rise often shines light on another man's final descent. And Brent Calloway was about to learn that redemption doesn't belong to the one who shouts the loudest, but to the one who learns to kneel first. It was nearly dusk in Phoenix, the kind of evening where light turns gold before dying into blue. Inside Second Chance Defense Academy, the air buzzed with rhythm, gloves against pads, laughter echoing off concrete walls, the sharp whistle of Miguel Santos as he called for form and focus. Eli Mercer watched from the corner, arms folded. 3 months ago, this place was a hollow warehouse. Now it was alive. There were kids laughing where echoes used to live, and the sound of sweat and discipline replaced silence and shame. It was everything he'd fought for, dignity turned into movement. Yet peace, Eli knew, was fragile, especially when your past still had teeth. The door opened. Nina Alvarez entered with her usual composed stride, phone in hand. "You might want to see this," she said, handing him the screen. It was a live stream, Brent Calloway sitting on a podcast couch somewhere in Nevada, smirking for a small audience. He didn't beat me, Brent was saying. That fight was rigged. They edited the footage. They turned me into a villain for views. That guy's no hero. He's a fraud who got lucky once. Eli watched in silence, jaw tightening. The podcaster nodded eagerly, feeding Brent's delusion. So you're saying the whole viral story was fake? I'm saying justice got bought, Brent spat. The system sided with a thug because he played victim better than I could play fighter. Nina muted the video. He's been doing this on small channels all week. Try to rebuild his name. The audience isn't big, but it's growing. Eli sighed. Let him talk. He's accusing you of fraud, Eli. If this keeps spreading. He cut her off gently. Truth doesn't need defense, Nina. It just needs time. She studied him for a moment, then smiled faintly. You sound more like a monk than a fighter these days. He shrugged. Fighting teaches patience and pain. But when the lights dimmed and the last students left, Eli lingered in the ring alone. The silence pressed in, thick and thoughtful. His reflection in the mirror stared back. Older now, calmer, but haunted by the knowledge that peace doesn't come without a price. Across the state line, Brent Calloway's world was shrinking fast. His small Nevada gym was nothing like Iron Forge. The mirrors cracked, the mats stained, the clientele disinterested. He was teaching teenage beginners now, kids who didn't know his name unless they Googled it. And when they did, they snickered. He'd go home to a one-bedroom apartment above a laundromat, replaying old clips on a flickering laptop, pausing on frames where he still looked powerful. His followers were gone, sponsors gone, pride gone. But obsession remained. He scrolled through Second Chance Defense's viral posts, Eli demonstrating techniques with Leah filming, smiling, humble. Each video racked up millions of views. Each comment section was a chorus of gratitude. Something in Brent's chest twisted. He stole my legacy, he whispered. But that wasn't true. Brent never had a legacy. Only a lie. Back at Second Chance, Caleb Raines was growing fast. His talent raw but refined under Eli's watchful eye. One evening, after sparring, he pulled off his gloves and said, Coach, why do you still clean the mats yourself? You've got people for that now. Eli smiled, passing the mop down the row. Because the floor doesn't care who owns it. It only stays clean if we respect it. Caleb nodded, eyes full of something more than admiration, something like purpose. That night, Leah Mercer uploaded another short clip of her father's class. It went viral instantly. This is my dad. Her caption read, He teaches strength that doesn't hurt people. He teaches men not to mistake kindness for weakness. Within days, the clip hit 10 million views. The Academy's email filled with inquiries from schools, shelters, and community centers wanting workshops. Even local law enforcement requested training. The story of the janitor who fought back had become a movement, and the man who tried to break him was being erased by time. But one evening, as Eli locked up the gym, his phone buzzed with a number he didn't recognize. He hesitated, then answered. Mr. Mercer? The voice was cautious, female, professional. This is Mara Steele from Netflix Originals. We're producing a documentary about your story, Second Chance, the Eli Mercer story. We'd love your participation. Eli froze. A documentary? Yes, she said warmly. It's already in production. We've interviewed your daughter, your coach, even Ms. Alvarez. We believe your story could inspire millions more. We just need your blessing. He hesitated. And Brent Calloway? There was a pause. We reached out. He declined an interview, but issued statements. He says he was framed. Eli sighed. Of course he did. But something about it didn't sit right. Stories, even true ones, can be told wrong. I'll do it, he said finally, but only if it's honest. Honest is exactly what we want, Mr. Mercer. When the call ended, Eli stood in the middle of the quiet gym, staring at the hanging, heavy bag, the same one that once betrayed his secret. The lights flickered softly above it, and the air smelled of sweat, resolve, and ghosts. Truth was coming for everyone now, even for those who had built their lives on lies. And somewhere in Nevada, watching the same Netflix press release on his cracked phone, Brent Calloway whispered into the darkness, If he gets the spotlight again, I'll make sure it's the last one he ever stands in. The sun over Phoenix had barely risen when the world woke up to the trailer. It began with a slow fade, a mop sliding across a gym floor, the sound of breath and echoes. Then came the narrator's voice, calm, deep, cinematic. He was invisible, until the day they pushed him too far. Clips flickered across the screen. Eli Mercer kneeling beside his cleaning cart, Brent Calloway shouting across the mat, the fight, the knockout, the courtroom. The title appeared in white over black. Second Chance, the Eli Mercer story. Streaming on Netflix, August 15th. The trailer went viral within an hour. Hashtags trended again. Interviews followed. Old networks wanted commentary. Motivational speakers quoted Eli's lines like scripture. Leah's phone buzzed endlessly with messages of support. She smiled, but her father didn't. Eli watched the trailer once and closed his laptop. They made it look like a war story, he murmured. Miguel Santos glanced up from his desk. It was a war. Not the kind they'll understand, Eli said quietly. Not the kind I want to fight again. He wasn't angry, just uneasy. He'd built Second Chance to move past the fight, not to relive it. But now the world was pulling him back, frame by frame. In Reno, Nevada, Brent Calloway's cracked phone screen glowed in the darkness of his small apartment. He watched the same trailer 3, 4, 5 times. Each replay carved another line of hate into his face. Second Chance, he muttered. He gets a documentary. I get silence. He threw the phone against the wall. The screen shattered, but the voice of the trailer still played in his head. He was invisible, until the day they pushed him too far. Brent laughed bitterly. Invisible? I made him visible. He stood in front of his mirror, jaw still slightly crooked from the knockout, eyes wild with the kind of resentment that corrodes reason. The reflection that looked back at him wasn't a man anymore. It was a ghost of the champion he once pretended to be. He wiped the condensation off the mirror with the edge of his sleeve, whispering to himself, I'll tell my story. The next day, a YouTube channel appeared. Truth Behind the Lie, the real Brent Calloway. The videos started small, shaky phone recordings, grainy screenshots, evidence he fabricated in his mind. He claimed the fight was staged. The court was rigged. The witnesses were paid. He even suggested Nina Alvarez and Miguel Santos were part of a setup orchestrated by the media to destroy him. The views were low at first. Then one of his clips, titled, Netflix Won't Show You This, hit the algorithm. Within 2 days, it had 1 million views. Meanwhile, at Second Chance, life pressed on. The students still came, eager and hungry for the philosophy that had changed their teacher's life. Caleb Raines trained harder than ever, preparing for his first amateur match under the academy's name. Eli spent his nights watching sparring sessions, helping Leah with her new editing work for the documentary team. But sometimes, when the gym went quiet, he caught his reflection in the mirror again, the same man from the trailer. He didn't recognize him. He'd built something good, something lasting. Yet every news headline, every click, every trending hashtag felt like a shadow of the fight he'd tried to leave behind. One evening, after closing, Miguel lingered with him in the ring. You ever think about how strange it is? Miguel asked. People cheer louder for the fight than the forgiveness. Eli smirked softly. Forgiveness doesn't sell subscriptions. Miguel laughed. Maybe not, but it saves souls. They didn't notice the camera light blinking red in the far corner. Someone had been recording through the glass. That night, Brent Calloway uploaded a new video. See this? Footage from inside his academy. Eli Mercer pretending to be humble, pretending to teach peace. But look closer, look at the ring. The man's training new fighters under his name. He's building an army, not a gym. This was never about redemption. It's about control. His eyes gleamed with manic triumph. He's using you. And the world fell for it again. Comments exploded. Conspiracies grew. A few channels even echoed his claims. Not because they believed them, but because outrage paid better than truth. By the end of the week, Brent's subscriber count passed 200,000. And while Eli slept peacefully in Phoenix, Brent was driving through the night with a duffel bag in his passenger seat, back toward the city he swore he'd never return to. Leah Mercer noticed the first strange sign 2 days later, a dead crow on the gym's doorstep, Its wings splayed open, feathers black against the morning light. Pinned beneath, there was a note. No signature, just 3 words scrawled in block letters. Your next hero. She froze, heart hammering. Then she ran inside. Dad! Eli turned, saw the note, and said nothing. He simply tore it in half and threw it away. But as the evening light fell across the gym floor, he found himself looking toward the heavy bag again, the one that had started it all. His reflection shifted with the sway of the bag, blurring his face in the mirrored wall behind it. For the first time in a long while, he wasn't sure whether he was looking at the man who found peace or the fighter who still lived in the shadows. Because some battles end in the ring, and others follow you home. The desert never sleeps, not really. It just waits, hot, silent, watchful. And that night, under the sodium glow of a Phoenix streetlight, a black sedan idled 2 blocks from Second Chance Defense Academy. Inside, Brent Calloway watched the building that had stolen his name, his pride, and everything he thought made him powerful. His hand trembled slightly as he took a long drag from a cigarette. The smoke curled around his face like the ghost of who he used to be. The windshield reflected the Academy's faint sign. Everyone deserves dignity. Brent laughed, low and bitter. Everyone but me, he muttered. He'd driven all night from Nevada, his duffel bag heavy with old gloves, printouts, and a cheap camera. The plan wasn't clear, not even to him. Was he here to confront Eli? To record him? To destroy him? Maybe all of it. Maybe none of it. All Brent knew was that hate doesn't die quietly. The next morning, Leah Mercer arrived early to prep for class. She was unlocking the glass doors when she noticed the faint scratch marks on the lock, fresh ones. Her gut tightened. She looked around, but the street was empty. Inside, she found nothing disturbed. Yet something felt off. The air smelled faintly of smoke. When her father arrived, she told him. Eli listened quietly, then checked the lock himself. His expression didn't change, but his eyes hardened. It's nothing, he said. Just kids trying to mess with the place. But he changed the locks that afternoon anyway. Across town, the Netflix crew was deep in post-production. Their director, Mara Steele, sat in the editing suite watching the footage again and again. Something about the story felt unfinished, like a storm still waiting to break. Are we sure he's okay with this ending? Her assistant asked. Mara frowned. Eli Mercer doesn't strike me as someone who likes endings. 2 nights later, the Academy's front door camera caught a blur of motion at 3:17 a.m. A figure in a hoodie stood at the threshold for a long moment, staring through the glass. The timestamp flickered. The figure pressed something against the door, then vanished into the night. The next morning, Miguel Santos found it, a folded photograph taped to the glass. It was a printout of the viral image of Brent on the floor of the ring, knocked out cold, but someone had drawn a red X over Eli's face. Miguel's jaw tightened. He showed it to Eli, who stared at it without flinching. I thought this was over, Miguel said. It never is, Eli replied softly. Some men fight until they find peace. Others fight because peace exposes who they really are. Meanwhile, Brent had rented a room at a cheap motel 2 miles from the Academy. His YouTube videos had evolved, no longer just angry rants, but full-blown monologues. He'd started streaming at night, his face half hidden in shadow. He built that place on my pain, Brent whispered into the mic. They call him a hero, but I know the truth. He's nothing without me. I made Eli Mercer. His followers, drawn to outrage like moths to flame, filled the chat with blind loyalty. You deserve justice, Brent. Expose him. Go there, man. Confront him, live. And in Brent's broken mind, it made sense. He'd lost his voice. Now he'd reclaim it. On camera. In real time. He packed his old gloves into his duffel and slid a small handgun into the side pocket. The lens of his cheap webcam caught his final grin before the stream went black. Back at Second Chance, Eli finished his last evening class and sat on the edge of the ring. Leah was editing footage beside him, humming quietly. Miguel was locking up. The piece felt almost sacred. Then came the knock. It wasn't loud, just deliberate. Eli glanced toward the door, a silhouette standing in the entryway, backlit by the streetlight outside. Sorry, we're closed, he called out. The figure didn't move. Leah looked up, confused. "Dad!" Eli stood, every instinct sharpening. Even after years of peace, his body remembered the rhythm of danger, the slight shift of a threat before it happens. The door opened. Brent Calloway stepped inside. He looked thinner, paler, his eyes sunken but burning with manic fire. In one hand, he held a phone on live stream mode. In the other, his old duffel bag. "Long time, Eli," he said, voice rough with sleepless nights. "Hope you don't mind me visiting my old student." Eli's voice was calm, but his stance was ready. "You shouldn't be here, Brent." Brent laughed, stepping closer. "Why not? You got your story, your fame, your fancy sign. Don't I get to tell mine?" Leah froze behind her father. Miguel stepped forward cautiously. "This isn't the way," Miguel said. Brent's phone tilted toward them, the red light still blinking. "It's exactly the way. The whole world's watching. Let's see what the hero looks like when the cameras aren't cutting the footage." He dropped the duffel bag. The zipper slid open, the faint metallic glint of a gun inside. Eli's voice dropped low. "Brent, listen to me. Whatever you think you're proving, this isn't it." But Brent wasn't listening. He was shaking now, years of bitterness boiling over. "You took everything. My name, my career, my life. You humiliated me." Leah's voice broke through the tension. "You humiliated yourself." Brent's head snapped toward her, eyes wild. "Don't," Eli said sharply, stepping between them. The standoff stretched, the air thick, seconds slowing to hours. Outside, sirens wailed faintly in the distance. Inside, the silence screamed. Brent's hand hovered near the bag, trembling. Eli took one step forward, palms open. "Brent, the fight's over." Brent's lip curled. "For you, maybe." The gun rose. And in that frozen second, the moment between peace and violence, forgiveness and fire, the past and present collided one final time. The sound came first, a sharp metallic click that split the silence like thunder before a storm. Brent Calloway's hand trembled around the gun, the live stream light still blinking red. Thousands of viewers watched from their screens, unaware that what started as rage bait was seconds away from tragedy. Eli Mercer stood perfectly still, his palms open, his voice steady as stone. "You don't have to do this, Brent." Brent's jaw quivered. Sweat rolled down his temple. "Yes, I do," he hissed. "You took everything. I was somebody before you. Now I'm just a man you beat." "No," Eli said softly. "You were lost before I ever touched you." Miguel shifted quietly to the left, stepping between Leah and the threat. Nina Alvarez, who had just re-entered from the office, froze by the doorway, her eyes darting to the weapon. Brent's grip tightened. "You think you're better than me?" "I think you're broken," Eli answered. "And I know what that feels like." For a second, Brent faltered. The mask of hatred slipped, revealing a flash of the man he used to be, scared, desperate, tired. His arm wavered, but the voices in his head, the ones built from ridicule and shame, screamed louder than reason. "Shut up," he yelled, lunging forward. Eli reacted faster than thought. A sidestep, a pivot, a hand striking Brent's wrist at the exact pressure point. The gun flew from his hand and clattered across the mat. Brent swung wildly, but Eli moved like water, parrying, redirecting, never striking back. "Stop, Brent." Eli's voice was both command and plea. "You're not my enemy." But Brent kept coming. Years of frustration, humiliation, and failure erupting in one final burst of chaos. He swung again, off balance. Eli ducked, grabbed his shoulder, and swept his legs out from under him. The live stream camera spun, capturing a blur of motion, a flash of bodies, a shout, a thud, and then stillness. Brent lay on the floor, breath ragged, fury dissolving into sobs. The fight had gone out of him long before the fall. Eli stepped back, chest heaving, staring at the man who had once been his tormentor. Then he looked at Leah, terrified, trembling, yet unhurt, and slowly exhaled. The sirens grew louder outside. Miguel Santos retrieved the gun, emptying the chamber and setting it aside. "Police will be here any second," he said quietly. Brent didn't move. Tears streaked through the grime on his face. "You win again," he whispered bitterly. Eli crouched beside him. No, Brent. Nobody wins when anger wins. Brent looked up at him, broken. Why didn't you finish it? Eli met his gaze. Because that's what you wanted, another fight. I came here to end them. The police arrived minutes later, lights flooding the gym in a wash of red and blue. Officers stormed in, securing the weapon, cuffing Brent as he muttered half-coherent words about betrayal and lies. The live stream, still rolling, had captured everything. The confrontation, the restraint, the mercy. By the time authorities shut it down, over 500,000 people had tuned in. Hours later, the academy was empty except for Eli and Miguel. The gym floor glistened with the reflection of the flashing lights, now fading outside. Miguel leaned against the ropes, shaking his head. That man nearly destroyed you twice. Eli sat down, back to the wall, staring at the dark ceiling. He didn't destroy me, he said quietly. He tested what I believed. Miguel sighed. And what's that? That strength isn't about who hits harder, Eli said. It's about who forgives faster. By morning, every major outlet had picked up the story. Headlines filled social media. Eli Mercer stops armed attack, shows mercy to former rival. Livestream redemption, the janitor who saved his enemy. Clips from the stream went viral again, but this time, it wasn't the punch that defined the story. It was the restraint, the image of Eli holding back when he had every reason not to. Brent Calloway's arrest made national news. The footage of him crying on the floor of the gym looped endlessly, not as humiliation this time, but as a warning. His channel was banned within hours. The outrage he'd built his life on had finally consumed itself. Netflix halted post-production immediately. By the following week, the documentary had a new ending. Instead of triumph and fame, it closed on footage of Eli walking alone into his gym the next morning, sweeping the same floors he once cleaned as a janitor, but this time as the man who owned them. A voiceover faded in. Redemption doesn't come from winning fights. It comes from choosing not to start them. In the weeks that followed, Second Chance Defense Academy became a symbol, not of rebellion, but of transformation. Donations poured in. Scholarships doubled. Local schools adopted Eli's warrior philosophy curriculum as part of their student programs. At the back of the gym, the heavy bag that started it all hung in its usual place. But now, beneath it, a new plaque had been added. True victory is peace. Leah smiled every time she walked past it. And Eli? He never stopped teaching, never stopped cleaning, never stopped believing that dignity was the most powerful form of defense. Some nights, when the gym lights dimmed and the city grew quiet, he'd whisper a silent prayer for Brent. That somewhere behind those prison walls, the man who once lived for domination might finally understand humility. Because Eli Mercer had already learned the hardest truth of all. Sometimes the fight God saves you from is the one you thought you needed to win. The world moved fast after that night. News anchors called him the man who forgave under fire. The same voices that once painted him as a victim now hailed Eli Mercer as a hero. But Eli didn't feel like one. Heroes, he thought, didn't lose sleep listening to echoes of a man crying on the floor. Every interview request he turned down. Every sponsorship offer he ignored. Every call from Netflix, he let go to voicemail. He'd had enough of spotlights, pretending to heal wounds they didn't understand. He only wanted quiet, the kind that comes after storms. Inside Second Chance Defense Academy, classes continued as usual. Leah Mercer handled social media. Miguel Santos taught the beginner drills, and Nina Alvarez managed the new flood of applicants with her calm, unshakable grace. Yet even amidst the laughter and sound of gloves meeting pads, something felt different. People whispered now when Eli passed by. They looked at him not as a teacher, but as a legend. It didn't sit right. He told Miguel one night as they locked up, "I don't want to be a story. I just want to be a man who did what was right." Miguel smiled gently. "Then keep doing what's right. Let the stories write themselves." But the stories wouldn't stop. The viral footage of the confrontation had become a digital parable, dissected, analyzed, remixed. Some called it proof of grace. Others called it weakness disguised as restraint. But to those who had ever been bullied, belittled, or broken, it was something else entirely. Hope made visible. In prison, Brent Calloway watched the same clips through a small tablet on loan from the facility library. The video played in silence. He didn't move. He had replayed that night 100 times in his mind. The moment where rage met mercy, where Eli's open hands replaced fists. Each time, it ended the same way, with shame sitting heavy in his chest. At first, he tried to fight the feeling. He blamed editing, angles, manipulation. But when the cell lights dimmed and the noise died down, he faced something no camera could capture: the truth. He broke down crying one night, head pressed against cold concrete. For the first time, the man who lived for domination felt the full weight of humility. And it didn't destroy him. It freed him. Months later, a letter arrived at the academy. Handwritten, no return address. Leah found it tucked under the door and handed it to her father. Eli recognized the writing immediately. "Eli, you don't owe me forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I need you to know that I understand now. You didn't humiliate me that night. You saved me. The fight ended because you refused to become me. If I ever walk free again, I'll find a way to live like the man I hated, with honor. Thank you for sparing what was left of me. Brent Calloway." Eli read it twice, folded it carefully, and placed it beneath the plaque under the heavy bag. He didn't tell anyone what it said. Some things, he believed, were between men and God. As the seasons turned, the academy became more than a gym. It became a sanctuary. Veterans, bullied teens, women rebuilding after trauma. They all came to learn not just how to fight, but how to heal. Caleb Raines, now undefeated in his amateur division, often told new students, "Coach Eli doesn't teach punches. He teaches patience." And that was true, because every time Eli wrapped his hands for demonstration, he remembered that patience is the art of strength under control, the lesson that saved his life and someone else's. A year after the Netflix documentary aired, Eli finally agreed to attend a public event, a youth conference in Phoenix titled Power with Purpose. When he stepped onto the stage, the audience rose to their feet. Applause thundered. He waited until the room fell quiet, then said, "I've been called a fighter my whole life. But what I've learned is that fighting isn't about winning. It's about knowing when to stop." He paused, scanning the crowd of young faces. If you live for domination, you'll die alone. But if you live for dignity, even your enemies will learn peace through you. The crowd was silent, and somewhere deep in the audience, a young man in a gray hoodie wiped his eyes and whispered, "Thank you." Later that night, Eli returned to the academy. The lights were low, the air cool. He sat beside the heavy bag, reading the letter once more. Leah found him there. "You okay, Dad?" He smiled. "Yeah, I think I finally am." She hugged him tightly, and for the first time in years, he felt the world breathe easy again. Because mercy had done what fists never could, it ended the fight for good. The final months of the year swept by quickly for Eli Mercer, each day slipping into the next like the pages of a well-worn book. He found himself teaching more, listening more, reflecting more, not just on what he had overcome, but on what he had created in its wake. The city of Phoenix had come to know Second Chance Defense Academy not just as a gym, but as a movement. Eli's philosophy had taken root in the community, transforming lives with its focus on self-defense and self-respect. His classes were packed with parents, children, students, and even corporate executives, all seeking to learn more than just how to throw a punch. They were there for the deeper lesson, to fight with strength, not against it. In the back corner of the gym, the heavy bag still hung, but now it bore a plaque beneath it, one that said, "True strength comes not from what you can destroy, but what you can protect." Eli would often stand in front of it, remembering how it had once exposed him, how it had revealed his skills in a moment of humiliation, but also how it had given him the courage to step out of the shadows. Now it symbolized his entire journey. It was a reminder that the greatest victories are those fought within and not without. One evening, after class, Miguel Santos walked over to Eli, handing him a small envelope. "It's for you," he said, grinning. "Guess who's back?" Eli raised an eyebrow, puzzled. He opened the envelope to find a postcard, worn and faded, with a photo of a small gym. The handwriting on the back read, "You were right. I finally found my fight. Don't know if I'll ever make up for the past, but I'm starting. Thank you, Eli." It was signed simply, Brent Calloway. Eli stared at the card for a long moment. His mind raced with the memories, the fight, the courtroom, the years of bitterness that had driven Brent to the edge. But now a part of him felt something else entirely. Not resentment, not anger, but relief. Brent had found his own redemption, just as Eli had found his. "Is it over?" Miguel asked quietly, reading Eli's face. Eli smiled faintly, placing the postcard into his desk drawer. "I think so. For now, at least." Leah Mercer had come in her own in ways Eli never expected. As the social media manager for the academy, she had become the face of Second Chance Online. Videos of her father teaching students, sharing life lessons, and even encouraging those who felt too broken to try had gone viral. Leah's confidence grew with every post she shared. Her eyes sparkled when she talked about her college acceptance, a scholarship to Arizona State University for social work. She had her sights set on a law degree eventually, inspired by the injustices she had witnessed her father overcome. "You really don't think I'm just following in your footsteps?" she asked one night, sitting on the old gym mat beside him. Eli looked at her, his expression filled with pride. "I think you're running your own race, Leah, and you're going to outrun me." Leah grinned, her eyes bright. "Just wait until I bring you to court one day to defend my cases." Eli chuckled. "I'll probably be the one on the stand, being called a hero for helping you get there." She poked him gently. "And don't forget, you'll be helping me teach those young kids about dignity, just like you taught me." Eli paused, his gaze lingering on her. "No matter what you do, I'll always be proud of you, Leah." She smiled softly. "I know, and I'm proud of you too." As the year drew to a close, Second Chance Defense Academy celebrated its anniversary. It wasn't the grand party that the media had predicted, nor was it filled with the usual fanfare that came with success. It was quiet, intimate. A few students, Miguel, Nina, and Leah, gathered for a humble celebration. Eli stood at the center, surrounded by the people who had helped him build something real. Not just a gym, but a foundation for people to reclaim their dignity. The space felt full, not with bodies, but with purpose. Leah stepped up beside him, holding up a glass. "To Second Chance," she said, her voice full of gratitude. "To all the people who have found their strength here, and to the one who taught us what true strength really is." The room fell silent. Eli smiled, his heart full. "Thank you, Leah. But the true strength was always in all of you. You were always stronger than you knew." As the glass clinked and laughter filled the air, Eli stepped aside for a moment to look around. He caught a glimpse of the heavy bag in the corner again, the same one that had once been his battleground. But now it was just a piece of the story, part of the place that had transformed his life and the lives of so many others. And for the first time in a long while, Eli Mercer felt at peace. Because the fight had long been over. Eli Mercer's journey wasn't defined by the battles he fought, but by the battles he chose to leave behind. It wasn't the strength to break, but the strength to forgive. It wasn't about what he could conquer, but what he could protect. And through his journey, from janitor to mentor, from survivor to teacher, he had learned one undeniable truth. True strength lies in lifting others up, not in putting them down. And with that knowledge, Eli found peace, the kind that isn't given but earned. As the years passed, Eli Mercer continued to teach. He didn't need recognition anymore. The echoes of fame had faded into the background, replaced by something far more lasting. The smiles of those he'd helped and the lives he'd touched. Second Chance Defense Academy had evolved beyond the walls of its modest beginnings. What started as a place of healing became a movement, a community of fighters, not just in the ring, but in life. Eli's students weren't just learning martial arts. They were learning resilience, dignity, and the power of respect. Leah Mercer, now an advocate for social justice and law, stood proudly alongside her father. As a young woman with her own career unfolding, she had inherited not just his work ethic, but his unwavering commitment to making the world better, one fight at a time. Miguel Santos and Nina Alvarez, the pillars of second chance, carried forward Eli's philosophy every day. The academy grew, reaching new communities and spreading Eli's message across Arizona and beyond. But it wasn't just about the academy. Brent Calloway, the man who had once been the symbol of Eli's greatest challenge, faded into obscurity. His former followers, disillusioned by the truth, scattered, while Eli's quiet, consistent strength continued to inspire thousands. In the end, Eli knew that his real victory wasn't in the knockouts or the courtroom victories, but in the lasting legacy he had built. His legacy was not about the battles fought, but about the ones he chose to leave behind. True strength, Eli had learned, wasn't in dominating others. It was in lifting them up when they couldn't stand. It was in showing grace when revenge called. It was in becoming a protector, a mentor, a father, not just a fighter. As Eli stood in his gym one last time, surrounded by those he had helped, he looked around and whispered to himself, "I didn't just build a gym. I built a family." And in that moment, Eli Mercer knew the fight had truly been worth it. Because the greatest strength of all is found in the love you give and the dignity you protect. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more thrilling cinematic stories just like this one. And share your thoughts in the comments below. What part of Eli's journey inspired you the most?